I've always been drawn to places where joy once lived. As someone who spent years documenting abandoned locations, I thought I'd seen everything. But nothing prepared me for what I discovered at Joyland Amusement Park. Have you ever wondered what happens to places of joy when the laughter fades? Today, we're exploring Joyland, a once thriving amusement park now consumed by silence. And I'm about to share the haunting stories that linger within its abandoned rides. Joyland opened in 1949, a beacon of post-war optimism sprawling across 47 acres of Kansas prairie. For decades, it was the heartbeat of summer, the roller coaster's thunderous roar, the Ferris wheel's gentle creak, and the perpetual symphony of children's laughter. Margaret Henderson worked here for 32 summers as a cotton candy vendor. She told me this place was magic, real magic. Families would drive hundreds of miles just to ride their wooden coaster. But by the late 90s, something changed. The crowds got smaller, the rides got older. And then came the incident. The park's final season was 2006. What started as a temporary closure became permanent abandonment. But the locals whisper about more than just financial troubles. They speak of the last night, June 15th, 2006, when something happened that ensured Joyland would never reopen. Margaret wouldn't tell me what happened that night. She just said some places are meant to stay closed. My first steps into Joyland felt like entering a tomb. The silence was unnatural. No birds, no insects, just the distant groan of metal settling into decay. The ticket booth still held faded signs. Children under 12. $5. A child's balloon, impossibly preserved, hung motionless from a light fixture. The turnstile's rusted solid hadn't moved in 18 years. As I ventured deeper, the atmosphere grew heavier. The main pathway, once filled with excited families, now stretched empty between towering rides that loomed like mechanical skeletons. The Cyclone, Joyland's crown jewel, stood broken-backed against the sky. Rails twisted into impossible angles, support beams scattered like discarded bones. This coaster had carried millions of riders safely for 57 years. What could have caused such devastation? I found my first clue near the loading platform, a maintenance log, final entry dated June 15th, 2006. The handwriting was hurried, almost frantic. Unusual vibrations in track 7. Something's wrong. Need to evacuate immediately. The entry was signed by Jake Morrison, the park's head mechanic. According to Margaret, Jake disappeared that same night. His tools were found scattered around the Cyclone's base, but Jake himself was never seen again. The Midway told its own story of interrupted life. Stuffed animals hung from game booths like executed sentinels. A ring toss game held 3 rings still balanced on the counter, as if someone had been mid-throw when time stopped. The funhouse entrance, once painted in brilliant reds and yellows, now stared with hollow eyes. Local kids claim you can still hear laughter echoing from inside on quiet nights. I decided mirrors reflected nothing but decay. The maze of passages, designed to confuse and delight, now felt genuinely menacing. Every step echoed strangely, as if the building itself was responding to my presence. I froze. That sound, children's laughter, distant but unmistakable. The acoustics could have been playing tricks, but something about it felt wrong, too joyful for a place so consumed by decay. Local historian David Crane explained that people don't understand what happened here. They think it was just another failed business. But Joyland was more than that. It was a place where generations made memories. When something like that dies suddenly, violently, the echoes don't just fade. That last night, June 15th, there were witnesses. Families said they saw impossible things. Rides moving without power. Lights flickering in patterns that seemed almost communicative. The Ferris wheel dominated Joyland's skyline, its 40-foot diameter, a landmark visible for miles. Local legend claimed it was the last ride to operate on closing night, and that it didn't stop when it was supposed to. Against better judgment, I climbed the maintenance ladder. Each rung felt less stable than the last, but I needed to see what the wheel's highest point revealed. From the top, Joyland's true scope became clear. 47 acres of dreams left to rot. But something else became visible. Patterns in the decay. Rides weren't randomly deteriorating. There was an intentional arrangement to the destruction. In one of the cars, I found something that made my blood run cold. A child's drawing, somehow preserved despite years of exposure. It showed the Ferris wheel, but with one crucial difference. Figures were falling from the cars, their faces twisted in terror. The drawing was dated June 15th, 2006. The same night, Jake Morrison disappeared. The same night Joyland closed forever. Retired Sheriff Tom Bradley investigated for months. Jake Morrison's disappearance, the reports of supernatural activity, the sudden structural failures. Nothing added up. It was like the park itself had decided to die. But in 30 years of police work, he'd never seen anything like what happened that night. Some places just aren't meant to be disturbed. As evening approached, I realized I'd been at Joyland for nearly 8 hours. The shadows were growing longer, and something about the approaching darkness felt different, more present. Margaret had finally agreed to tell me what really happened on June 15th, 2006. We met at the park's entrance as the sun set behind the Ferris wheel. That last night, everything was wrong. The rides were making sounds they'd never made before. Children were crying for no reason, and the Ferris wheel kept turning long after they shut off the power. Jake Morrison was trying to fix whatever was happening. He climbed up to the wheel's motor housing. That's when they heard the screaming. Not from Jake, from the rides themselves, like they were alive and angry. When morning came, Jake was gone. The cyclone's tracks were twisted. The funhouse mirrors were all shattered from the inside, and the Ferris wheel was frozen at exactly midnight. Some places, I've learned, are not meant to be disturbed. Joyland wasn't just an amusement park. It was a repository of decades of pure joy. When that joy was suddenly severed, something fundamental was broken. As I left Joyland that evening, I understood why it remains abandoned. Some places hold on to their memories so tightly that they become more than mere locations. They become guardians of what was lost. The laughter may have faded, but it hasn't disappeared. It's waiting. And perhaps that's exactly where it belongs.